Okay, hey. Coming at you from Florida, the Hurricane Idalia is pretty much past our area, and I just went out there for a little drive just to see. We got a lot of water. There was some winds and some lines got knocked down, but for the most part, I think we made it safely. We don't really have any major issues in the Tampa Bay area, as far as I could tell. So moving on to my Game of Thrones stuff, this will be my last character commentary video for my Game of Thrones opinions. I'm going to wrap it all up in this video. This doesn't have to do with any households. This video is just me talking about all the other characters, which I affectionately and jokingly call the homeless people. That's funny. Homeless meaning that the characters I'm going to talk about now are don't have the traditional type of like household thing. Like the Wildlings, they're called the free folk. They don't have a coat of armor, although they do sort of have a sort of like a king, kind of the king beyond the wall. Um, and then there's the Dothraki tribe. They're tribal people. They don't do stuff like the royal type of people, or they don't do that. That they're tribal. The Wildings are like clannish. So these are like sort of like more Aborigine type of people, and they don't have a household like that. Then there's also the Nightwalkers, which are considered sort of like monsters or supernatural type of creatures. And the witches, which we had a few witches, Miss Melisandre, and also a witch uh, that Daenerys consulted with. You have some soldiers uh, like Grey Worm, who was from a different army, um, and the men at the wall. They're also soldiers. You have Varys, who's a eunuch and a spy and a consultant. He doesn't. I don't think he has a household either. He's sort of like a mysterious, one of the most mysterious characters. And then you have the Sparrows, which they're sort of like a religious cult. And so I don't think they have a household either. They're just known as the Sparrows. Okay, so this is everybody else. All right, so let's start with my favorite of the homeless people, and they're the Wildings. Of the homeless people, I really like the Wildings because they have four characters that you come to know and love. Or I mean, I did. I Egret, Orell, Tormund, and the king beyond the wall, known as Mance Rayder. I just thought all four characters were super cool to watch and to get to know. And um, Egret is like this, fiery redheaded free woman who falls in love with Jon Snow, and then she wants to kill him when he wants to break up. That's kind of funny. But they were like a great couple. I thought they looked great together. They were happy together. They were in love, until he wanted to break up and kind of go back to his other life. That's when she wanted to kill him. But while they were together, it was beautiful. Orell is like another Wilding. I kind of got the impression that he kind of looks at Egret as like his sister, even if they're not blood or whatever. They're both free folk. They probably live together, eat together, work together, so it's kind of like her brother. He didn't like Jon Snow, and he was trying to tell Egret, like, he's not one of us. Like, you don't know what you're doing here. He was trying to warn Egret about Jon. Um, then there was Tormund. Oh my God. Talk about another great character. Tormund cracked me up as much as the Hound, almost as much as the Hound. He was so funny. He has a major crush on Brienne, who does come from a household that I didn't mention, but he has a crush on her. And when he looks at her, I just crack up so hard because he just does this sort of like wow kind of thing when he looks at Brienne, and it cracks me up so much. I mean, Tormund was funny. He becomes really good friends with Jon Snow, and they fight a lot of like really serious battles together. And the king about beyond the wall, known as Mance Rayder. I don't really have much to say about him because I don't really remember that much about him being like shown in the show. He was there, but I don't really remember what he did or said. Then there's the Dothraki. Now, with the exception of Khal Drogo, I didn't really like the Dothraki. Khal Drogo, we loved him because when he was married to Daenerys, I mean, we at first we were just like, oh God, he doesn't even like her. But then it's like he fell in love with her, and then she got pregnant with his baby, and he was just like, I mean, when she had his baby, when she was carrying his baby, she was like literally the sun and moon to him. So then we saw a whole different side of him, and we were like, wow, Khal Drogo is cool because I mean, he just put her on like the highest pedestal that a woman could be put on. And so Khal Drogo was pretty cool, and he was so passionate I mean, like by the household and the royals, he's considered a savage, but he's really cool. I mean, you know, he's tribal, but he does have a system, and he does have a lot of passionate love and respect for family and what the way he sees how it should be done. I mean, he would die for his family, definitely. I mean, and but of course the Dothraki have this sort of mentality that you know the sort of like they're invincible. They kind of think they're invincible, and they never suspect that they'll die in battle, especially their best warriors. And Khal Drogo never suspected that. So when he got a little cut, and he didn't think it was anything, but then started getting infected or something, and Daenerys started getting worried, and she consulted with this witch. We don't really, I don't think we get the name. I don't know what the name of the witch was. She was sort of like a gypsy traveling among the tribes and stuff like that. But she didn't like the Dothraki, and so she gave Daenerys sort of bad advice, and then she basically made it worse. She made this cut that was a little infection. She made it worse, and he got all messed up. And in the end, she lost him, and then she lost the baby too. But that sort of messed up her situation big time because then she sort of belonged to the Dothraki tribe, and they weren't in love with her. Not like Khal Drogo. Wasn't carrying their baby, like she wasn't their wife. She was just a widow to them, and she was going to be thrown in with the widows. And the widows were already there, like, yeah, hey, welcome to the club. And she was like, oh my god, like I'm from Valeria. I'm, Daenerys the dragon, and I can't believe that this is, she was super, super young, and she was going to be hanging out with like these old women who had already had a full life. She was just sort of like shocked, like that this was her destiny. So she's listening to them and trying to figure out, like, is this really where I'm going to end up? And then they start like threatening her and trying to scare her, and basically saying that if she doesn't do what they say, they will rape her and beat her up and just do all these horrible things to her. And at that point, she plans the sort of major vengeance and blows them all up, and comes walking right out of the fire like whoop-de-doo. It was a pretty interesting scene. Then you have the other witch, which we get to know as Melisandre. Now, I don't know if other people are going to agree with me the way I perceive this witch. She is a very powerful witch, very powerful, and she worships the fire god, or the Lord of Light, something like that. She's always looking into the fire to sort of get her information. She's a very powerful witch, and sometimes she does really good things for people, and sometimes she convinces people to do really wicked things, like with the Stannis and the thing. But I'm going to get to that in a second. The good things that she did, which she didn't have to, like when Jon Snow gets killed, sort of like in a Julius Caesar type of way, they all, stab him in the back and kill him. Some of the people were horrified and shocked by that, and they didn't know what to do without Jon. So they went to Melisandre, the witch, and asked if she could do sort of this spell that other people know how to do too, not just her. But it was like a not reincarnation of sort of like a what's the word? It's not reincarnation, but it's to bring someone back. She had that magic, that spell. So she does it for Jon Snow and brings him back after he dies in sort of like this Julius Caesar type of scene. And then with the Stannis thing, I think that's where she was showing her wicked side. But here's my deep, deep psychological probing into Melisandre and why she did that wickedness there. I think it's just a theory, okay? I think the reason that she convinced Stannis and his wife to kill their child is because when she saw the little girl, Shireen, I think Melisandre saw herself. She looked at Shireen and said, "That's me when I was a child." And I guess maybe she just thought that she could prove that Stannis and his wife were not good parents and that they didn't deserve to have Shireen. And she proved it. That's just my theory. I know it seems like a wicked witch and it's a terrible thing to do to convince them, but then again, she wasn't the one who lit the fire. She was like a devil. She sort of planted the idea in their head, but they're the ones who did it. So she proved a point. If my theory on her psychology was right, she proved a point there. So, but that was a very powerful witch with very and she was sort of banned away from after she brought Jon back to life. She was sort of banned because another fan of Shireen told Jon what had happened there, and so she kind of gets banned because she's partially responsible because for convincing them to do that. Okay, then there's the Men of the Wall, which I just sort of mentioned something about the men at the wall, the soldiers there. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of soldiers there. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of like boot camp or something. But they're there, and this is kind of weird. They're there because to stop the Wildlings beyond the wall, and also just in case there are these things called Nightwalkers, which most of the realm doesn't believe. They think it's just some like myth that they don't believe. So, but the soldiers are there just in case the Wildlings want to mess with them or the Nightwalkers exist. Okay, so and a lot of these soldiers, you know, they're learning. They don't even really know it, and they're not all like, ready to go like Jon Snow. I mean, and when Tyrion goes to visit, he's trying to explain that to Jon Snow, like, some of these are like just young boys who have a really terrible life, and they're just here because they either have no life or they don't know what to do, and they don't know anything about combat, and so they're here to learn, and John's trying to understand because he's like, I'm better than them. And yeah, okay, you grew up with Ned. I mean, Ned taught you a lot, but these other boys, they didn't have all that, So they're, he's John does rise through it though, and becomes very, very loved in a way by the men at the wall. But then, just like all that backstabbing that happens all over the place, that happened there too. And I referred to Julius Caesar because when I was watching, like in shock that they were just gonna kill Jon Snow like that, I was I was like, wow, that is like a Julius Caesar type of scene right there, because it was like, et tu brute. Like, I mean, it was just kind of like he thinks, everybody loves him and he's successful at the wall, and, and he's going to be this great, you know, revered soldier. And then all of a sudden, boom, here come the backstabs and they kill him. They actually kill him. It's crazy. So, that's the wall. The other characters that were weird were the Sparrows. I mean, they caused a lot of drama. That's sort of like your religious cult. Some churches could be called that. I mean, it could be the church, could be a cult. It's basically representing people who will uh, use religion as a weapon. And because you didn't really get that, because in this world that Martin creates, they have a lot of religions, and they show that different households have different religions, different tribes, the clan, everybody has different beliefs, and nobody really has a problem with that. But the Sparrows show that they can use religion as a weapon, and they did, and they hurt the Lannisters big time with that. So that's what the Sparrows were about, using religion as a weapon. Uh, and then there was two other, the last three characters I'll mention are going to be Grey Worm, Missandei, and Varys. Grey Worm and Missandei were, Grey Worm was a soldier. Missandei was sort of like a translator slave, a slave who was a translator, and Grey Worm was a soldier who was a slave, and they both got freed by Daenerys, and they both ended up working for Daenerys, and they were pretty much just pawns, because when once Daenerys decided to challenge King's Landing, uh, Missandei was, going to be crucified as, you know, as sort of like a pawn in the chess game. And then Varys is probably the most mysterious character of the whole show. My favorite quote from Varys was something, they asked him, like, "Why do you care so much about the realm?" And Varys's reply was, "Somebody has to." Because I thought that was a great line, and I really respected Varys as a character, even though you know that he's super mysterious and you really don't know what he's doing or what he's up to. You really never really know with him. But because he's totally different from everybody else. I mean, he doesn't he doesn't care about all the stuff that the other people care about. So I mean, it's like when he says that somebody has to, it's like that's it. That's all he cares about is existence. It's like he's not, he does things just to sort of keep things going, but he doesn't really care about anything. And so a lot of people are suspicious about him all the time. Like someone like Baelish doesn't really know how to take Varys, because Baelish thinks that everybody should be motivated by either money or sex. Whereas Varys is a eunuch, so sex doesn't mean anything to him. He's sort of like he's sort of like a monk too, so money doesn't mean anything to him. So you don't know what his motivations are. So he's very mysterious. And that's about it. Those are the other characters, the ones that I call the homeless. It's just a joke.